Hello and welcome back to Continental Club, where we discuss the hottest topics in European football. Joining me as usual is Patrick van Straten, and for his first Continental Club appearance in quite a while, it's Joe Tomlinson stepping in last minute for Christopher Hamill.
Yeah.
Many thanks to Joe. But today we are looking at Shrith Kek Kathari's question.
Wow.
Which is, what is the best and worst signings that have slipped under the radar? But before we get involved in that, just a quick reminder to subscribe to EuroFootball Daily and hit that notification bell to never miss a video. And very excitingly, we have launched a new channel recently, Football Daily Podcast. Here's a clip from Pat explaining what it's all about.
Hello, it's Patrick van Straten, just letting you know about our new podcast channel, Football Daily Podcasts. From now on, the Extra Time podcast will be going live over on that channel every week, and it will not be alone. We'll be premiering a European football podcast very soon, headed up by our very own Dougie Critchley. So head over to Football Daily Podcasts if you want to check out the podcast in video form. And of course, you can still get it as an audio download on your favourite podcast app. We hope to see you there.
Cool, so as you heard there, go over to Football Daily Podcast and subscribe. A new podcast just dropped on Wednesday. But back to the matter in hand, because it's getting to that stage of the season where many clubs and fan bases will be taking stock and sort of reviewing how their season went, what worked well, what didn't, who shone, who wasn't up to scratch, etc. So we've decided to profile solely on this show the worst signings of the season. We might well do another one with the best, but we're only doing half the question today. And Pat, we are kicking off with Rony Lopes, who has had just a disastrous campaign.
Yeah, I mean, this was Monchi's return to Sevilla, and it was meant to be triumphant, and it hasn't really worked out that way, because Rony Lopes was probably, I guess, the statement signing of last summer for Sevilla. He came in for 25 million, while Wissam Ben Yedder went to Monaco for 40 mil, so it kind of was a part exchange thing. And that seemed sensible at the time, because as good as Ben Yedder is, he is approaching the tail end of his career, and Rony Lopes is 24 and does have a good track record, even though he's had to deal with some injuries. So I certainly wasn't against it at the time. I mean, a couple of years ago for Monaco, he had a truly amazing season. The 17-18 campaign, he was really young. I think he got 16 goals and 6 assists. Pretty much one of the best attackers in Ligue 1 at that point. But then had a bunch of injuries the next year and just some poor form, went down to 4 goal contributions. And since then, he just hasn't really looked the same. Like, his expected goals have gone down year on year, which is really weird. And this season, he just can't seem to get in the side. Like, I mean, to a degree, it's not his fault. Like, Lucas Ocampos has had a really good campaign. They brought in Suso in January, and then guys like Oliver Torres and Franco Vazquez have slightly different skill sets. Rony Lopes is much more of a goal-scoring wide player. Oliver Torres is going to do a lot of pressing and ball progression. Franco Vazquez is a little bit more of a creative second striker, I guess. But given the amount they spent on Rony Lopes, it's hard to see this as anything other than a catastrophe. I think that their outlay on him means that they've spent €185,000 per minute he's played in the league this season. And that's just going on his transfer fee. That's not including his wages, which is absolutely awful. 14 appearances in all competitions. And now it looks like Nice want to bring him in on loan, but Sevilla kind of want to sell him because they just think, let's get him off the books as soon as possible. This is a big earner. And actually, I think that last summer's transfer window, people have overlooked how badly it went for Sevilla because they've been really good under Lopetegui. But they had some serious misses. Rony Lopes, serious miss. Munas Dabour came in and went out on loan in January. Chicharito has gone off to LA Galaxy. Yeah, all these high-profile signings were expected to work out, and instead, even when Luuk de Jong was in very poor form, he was still being played all the time because obviously Lopetegui didn't trust his alternatives. So I think for a club like Sevilla to spend 25 million euros and get essentially nothing in return, that has got to go down as a transfer disaster. The only good things you can say about it are, one, if they can't shift Lopez, he probably can't be this bad again. Like, if he recovers full fitness, maybe he will play his way back into contention. And he isn't old. So there obviously is time for him to come good. But given that they're a club that made their name on buying cheap and selling high, this seems like the opposite way around. They're gonna end up, if they do sell him, selling him for probably half of what they paid.
Yeah, I think Nice actually want him only on loan, but Sevilla want to get rid of him permanently. But as you say, difficult final season at Monaco with Hardim being sacked and then Henry being hired and then fired and then Hardim coming back in. So, sort of excuse him on that, but just hasn't really got going at Sevilla. No discernible injuries to talk about when I was looking that up as well. I was trying to find out, do some digging about whether maybe it's an attitude problem or something like that. I couldn't find anything. I just think he hasn't been favoured by Lopetegui at all. And as you say, Lucas Ocampos in particular has really shone, particularly in the last few weeks. He's really sort of secured Sevilla that fourth spot in the last few weeks with some fantastic displays. But Joe, let's move over to Germany now, because a move that we were pretty keen on at the time was Ademola Lookman going to RB Leipzig, but he, similarly to Lopez, hasn't had the best of time of it.
Yeah, I think to call this one of the worst transfers of the summer is extremely harsh, though. Just for context, I think there are plenty worse deals than Ademola Lookman for 20-odd million euros to Leipzig. I know that we're going to talk about Hazard and Griezmann coming up, but also Luka Jovic looks like an absolute whiffer of a deal now. What was that, 50 million, something they paid for? And Joe Linton as well to Newcastle, 40 million euros. Makes this move look pretty decent. But nevertheless, I think Ademola Lookman, he'll be disappointed in how this season's gone, because he showed such promise, didn't he, on that one season, or half a season, sorry, that he spent on loan at Leipzig. And I think he is still the fourth record transfer in Leipzig history. So for a club that are kind of competing for Bundesliga titles, I'm sure he would have been hoping to get more minutes than he has this season. And, it might not be just his fault, to be fair, because Nagelsmann obviously has a pretty strong plethora of players to pick from in those attacking positions, and he is competing with the likes of Nkunku and Werner and Poulsen, so it's never going to be easy for him. And I think Leipzig maybe thought, with Ademola Lookman, they can mirror almost a Jadon Sancho type deal where an out of favour young English star could be picked up for a reasonable fee, and they'll hope to turn a profit on him in the future. And it just hasn't really worked out that way. 12 League and Champions League appearances this season, just 2 starts. Pretty disappointing, I think it'll be from his perspective. I wonder whether or not he'll want to get a loan move away from the club next season, and whether Nagelsmann will allow that to happen. But I've just got some of his statistics in front of me here, because they're pretty difficult to analyse, because he's just not played many minutes effectively, but they look alright on paper. 3 shots over 2 key passes, over 2 dribbles, combined expected goals and assists of 0.7. So on paper they look pretty decent, but in realistic world, he hasn't got enough minutes to warrant a 25 million euro fee it will end up being, although I think initially it was more like 20. So he'll be disappointed. I think Leipzig will be disappointed, but I'm not going to call it the worst move of the summer, just because there's been some absolute whiffers at Madrid, and Griezmann at Barcelona, Joe Linton at Newcastle, elsewhere.
Yeah, no, it's completely fair enough. I should have specified at the beginning. Basically, we are going to talk about the big hitters in due course, but I wanted to, we talk about the Griezmann, the Hazards, the Jovic's all the time. So I was looking more sort of around Europe, maybe sort of going slightly lower down in price tag and see moves that haven't worked out.
Yeah.
But Lookman, I think, should get a bigger opportunity now. Werner's left. Haven't seen. Although they have just bought Hwang Hee-chan in from RB Salzburg as well.
I don't know if that's true. I hope so, but my big concern here is not Nkunku, because Nkunku's been so good that he has to play, and Poulsen is a different sort of player, and Hwang Hee-chan will be a different sort of player, and Schick as well. My concern is that they went and spent all that money on Dani Olmo in January. If I'm Ademola Lookman, then I look at that and I think, are you serious? He was really, really promising, and they made. Do you remember they went for him and didn't get him, and then went back for him twice to get this deal done, and seem to have immediately moved on from it. So I don't know. I mean, he's still very young, but that would really piss me off if I was.
When does Schick's loan finish? Is he still on loan? Is that going to be?
He's still on loan at the end of the year, but I think they've got an option to buy him.
And you'd have thought they would, right? He's had a pretty good season.
Yeah.
So they've got plenty of options, and Lookman isn't the only young player that's slightly struggled for minutes. So Adams hasn't hit 1,000 league minutes. Haidara's at 745. Ampadu just 79 Bundesliga minutes, although did play very well in. It was against Spurs in the first leg of their round of 16, wasn't it?
Oh man,
so. Nagelsmann's got so many options. He's got so many talented young players. It's really difficult to break into the starting 11, which did play exceptionally well, particularly for the first half of the campaign. So, Lookman, maybe hold on, keep your patience, maybe angle for a loan move this summer and see what happens. But continuing our sort of look around more sort of lesser known bad transfers as well, Emil Audero moving to Sampdoria from Juventus for a club record 20 million euros hasn't worked out at all. So he spent the previous season on loan at Sampdoria, helped them finish 9th. He's played in every one of their league games this year. They as a side concede 13.1 shots per game, which is actually 8th in the division. Yet only 5 sides have conceded more than their 54 goals in 33 games. And so that's 1.6 goals a game. And I don't watch Sampdoria every week, and I won't pretend that I do. But from what I've seen, Sampdoria's attack has really struggled this year. Quagliarella hasn't had as good a campaign as last year. No surprise, because he's nearly 40. Or he might even be way over that. I can't even remember his exact age. Gaston Ramirez is their main striker. So their attack isn't the most free-flowing. So they really need Audero in goal to be very well. But XG suggests that they should have conceded 46 goals instead of 54. So that 8.3 differential is actually the second largest in Serie A behind Genoa. And if they had kept to their expected goals against, they'd be 10th rather than 14th. And they're still not totally safe from relegation, Sampdoria. So while it's harsh to blame it all on Audero for their club record fee to not really work out as they planned is pretty disappointing. Another on that note, big fee that hasn't worked out, Borja Iglesias, 17 goals and 3 assists for Espanyol in 18-19. Only 6 players scored more goals. Then joined Betis in a massive 28 million euro deal, which was their second biggest of all time behind Denilson, which was done in the 90s. But his return, 33 La Liga games. God, I can't speak at all today. 3 goals and 2 assists. Oh. And his key numbers have just fallen apart. So 1.6 shots, 0.7 key passes, 0.7 dribbles. So for 28 million euros, no return whatsoever.
Stinking.
And his combined expected goals and assists dropped from 0.6 last year, which is solid, to 0.25, which for a striker is really pretty poor. And with Betis struggling in large parts this season, Ruby losing his job recently, Pellegrini coming in, which should really revitalise them. But Borja Iglesias has got to bore a bit of the brunt for their sort of massively disappointing campaign. So, yeah, those are our sort of unheralded worst signings. But let's get into the big boys, guys, because there was 3 massive £100 million signing plus deals last year. Griezmann, Hazard and Joao Felix. Pat, of those, which do you think is the worst? And does Joao Felix even deserve to be...
I mean, is Joao Felix still in his first season? I feel like he's been at Atletico for 8 years.
Yeah, sure. I don't think Joao Felix should be in here at all. Like, if you just look at those headline numbers, like 6 goals, 1 assist in the league this year, that doesn't look great. But everybody's kind of underperformed at Atletico. And I think he's, by XG, you'd expect him to have about 11 goals and assists in about 1,700 minutes, which is pretty tasty. And also, he's extremely young. I just don't think... I would never say that a transfer has been bad when a player is that young. I don't think that makes sense at all, because look at it this way. Joao Felix costs more in raw transfer fee than Eden Hazard and Antoine Griezmann. But because of the length of his contract, he'll actually cost them less per year over the course of it, not even taking into account wages. And you can guarantee his wages are a lot lower than those two guys are. So Hazard, because it's 100 mil over a 5-year contract, that's 20 mil a year. Griezmann, 120 mil over a 5-year contract, is 24 mil a year. Whereas Felix signed a 7-year contract at 126 mil, which is 18 mil a year. And at the end of it, Griezmann's going to have no resale value because he'll be 34. Hazard will be 34. Joao Felix will be 24. So from that point of view, yes, they overpaid for him. I would not have spent nearly that amount on him last summer. However, given that they did it, I think they've got a really good player there who's going to be at the heart of that side for a long time to come. And I fundamentally just think that, like, I can understand the rationale behind signing Felix in a way I couldn't really understand it with Griezmann. I could maybe understand it a bit with Hazard because, you know, his price was down a little bit. They could have just given him a shorter contract, and I'd probably be okay with it. But he's had such a woeful season that it does look like a bit of a failure. But in a way, that's not Real Madrid's fault. It's not Real Madrid's fault that Hazard turned up in horrible shape. Whereas Griezmann, I think, was a bad idea, which they did at least 2 years too late. They overpaid for him. They didn't think about whether he was going to fit into their system. They then changed manager mid-season, making him even more difficult to fit in. It's just been a disaster all round. So I have no sympathy for Barcelona. I have a tiny bit of sympathy for Real Madrid. And Atleti, I think, are basically fine.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there. I think Joao Felix, particularly since the restart, has looked really sharp alongside Marcus Llorente. Atleti have put together a pretty good run of form, pretty much secured third place. So Joao Felix, I just put him in here to add a bit of spice. Plus, his massive fee probably deserved a mention. But Joe, out of Hazard and Griezmann, who have you been most disappointed with, let's say?
Probably Griezmann, because at least Eden Hazard's kind of got the backdrop of being so injured and having to adapt to La Liga from the Premier League. And, you know, at least he cost 20 million euros less. Griezmann, I think, was a pretty unnecessary and poor decision to sign him in the first place. I think it's been even worse of a decision because of his performances on the field. I think he's clashed with Leo Messi off the field as well. And to be honest with you, it has just been an absolute disaster. I don't think any of us particularly liked the move when it first happened. And it hasn't proved to be a good one. But yeah, we've spoken loads about Griezmann. I also want to talk about Luka Jovic, man. Like I mentioned him earlier, but what was he, 55 million euros, I think, Luka Jovic, and he's played 300 minutes of La Liga football. I think he's had 4 starts in the league, and it's now going to be shipped off this summer. That looks like one of the most bizarre signings now, doesn't it? Obviously not a player that Zidane wanted in the first place. And both of those Frankfurt strikers that have moved on from last summer, Seb Aller and Jovic, have had really the following season, haven't they? Seb Aller, you could say the same about him at West Ham. I think, what was he, 40 million euros ish in that ballpark. He's not had a good season, now playing second fiddle to Mikel Antonio, and now Luka Jovic is probably going to end up playing for a middling Premier League side or something like that, or back to Germany for him. So yeah, I think Luka Jovic would probably be my worst signing of the season behind Griezmann.
But there are loads of people, man, who are lucky to not be on this list here. I mean, like Nicolas Pepe, huge overpay for him. Like, I don't know, I think he's looked inferior to Ismail Assar this season, who is a lot younger and cost a lot less. Even though you assume there's more to come, like that was pretty disastrous. Costas Manolas, he went to Napoli for like 40 mil. They've had a god-awful season. I'm trying to think of others, but I know that there's some absolute trash hovering around. Who else is there, Dukes? Help me out.
Well, I was trying to, because I looked at the prices from high to low earlier, and the Guardian website do this great list. And there were some players that you'd probably say were massively overpriced. I think a lot of people, we were trying to keep this European.
Nico Schultz at Dortmund.
Harry Maguire was obviously £80 million. He doesn't look like an £80 million player. He never was, probably. Nico Schultz as well. We talked about him a couple of weeks ago. Really struggled to get in front of Raf Guerrero, but do you really blame him for that? It's quite tricky. I'd probably say controversially that have De Jong and De Ligt probably lived up to their billing. I think De Ligt, particularly in the early part of the season, was not that steady at the back for Juventus. He then ended up getting dropped. He's played better in recent weeks, but Juve have actually shipped a hell of a lot of goals in recent weeks as well, drawing 3-3 with Sassuolo again last night. And has De Jong looked the player that Barcelona were probably expecting? I think it seems a bit harsh to say that he hasn't, but I don't think he's overwhelmed as well.
What about Luka Hernandez? Was that this season or was that last January?
That was last.
I think that was this season,
last summer exactly.
Because that has been absolute bush. Like, I mean, in his defence, like injured Davis and Davis and Alaba have both had sensational seasons. But if I pay 70 mil for a guy, I want him to be a starter, and he hasn't been. So I don't know, that's a fail.
I think didn't he rupture his ACL though? I think did he do his ACL or his MCL?
Yeah, he did something like that.
He was injured when they were negotiating for him, right? But even still, like when he's been fit, like he can't displace a 19-year-old converted winger at left back. And as good as Davis has been, Lucas Hernandez should be able to get in to that team.
Well, exactly, a World Cup winner. And I think it must be even harder for him because he's seen his brother Theo absolutely kill it at AC Milan in a far inferior side. So, yeah, plenty of candidates there for worst signing of the summer. I hope you enjoyed our sort of less heralded names as well. But let us know who you guys thought is the worst signing of the summer in the comments down below. And let's move on to Big Match Preview. Our big match preview this weekend, we could have talked about La Liga, which obviously comes to a conclusion, but the pick of the ties was probably Atletico Madrid versus Real Sociedad, and it actually doesn't have that much riding on it. But the title's sewn up pretty much. Top four is all but decided. So instead, we wanted to focus on Serie A. We could have talked about Juve versus Lazio, but that's taking place on Monday. So the biggest clash of this weekend is definitely 5th place Roma versus 4th place Inter Milan, Sunday at 9:15. Joe, Roma, difficult season and haven't been at their best recently.
Yeah, they won't be happy with how they've started since the restart, to be honest with you. Played 7, won 4, lost 3, pretty mediocre, scored 10 but conceded 9, again pretty mediocre, and they've maintained that 5th place position, but it's not a strong 5th place position anymore. Obviously, they were only 6 points behind 4th place Atalanta when we restarted. They're now 11 points off 4th place Inter Milan. So Fonseca is not going to be happy about that at all. You know, they are better than last season, averaging 1.8 goals per game this season, 1.3 against last season, 1.7 and 1.3 against. So they're marginally better. Not much better, but marginally better under Fonseca. And this game is going to be an exciting one, I think, because Roma ranked 4th in the league for shots per game, 17.2 that is as well, by the way, which is an awful lot. Just for some context, that's more than every team in the Premier League, bar Manchester City. And they also rank 4th for shots against per game, just 11.6. So they are an exciting team to watch, but the main issue really for them has been their finishing. Really, really behind on expected goals right now. In fact, they're basically 7 goals behind on expected goals, the second biggest gap in the whole division. And there's one man really that has been shouldering the blame, Edin Dzeko. He's had an alright season, 15 goals in 32 games, but XG claims he should have close to 20. So he's underperforming by about 5 goals right now, which is not particularly great. Second top scorer is actually Henrik Mkhitaryan, of course, the Premier League's forgotten man. 8 goals, 4 assists, which look okay statistically. I haven't watched him play at all, though, this season, thank God, because I just could not bear watching Henrik Mkhitaryan kick a ball about. But nevertheless, they're an all right team to watch, take plenty of shots, but Inter Milan's going to be a tough test this weekend, isn't it, Pat?
Yeah, I mean, well, it will be tough, in theory. But their form since the restart has been pretty wobbly, to be honest. Like, I mean, it's not a great time for them to play Roma. I think they've got 4 wins, 2 draws, and a loss in 7 games. And it's been weirdly un-Conte-like. They've scored more than 2 goals a game in that time, but they've conceded 10 in 7, which feels very, very Conte-ish. Very un-Conte-ish, really. And right now, where they end this season, I don't think they're going to finish lower than 4, because of that advantage they have over Roma. But if they end up 4th, having finished their last season under Spalletti, I do think it will feel like a disappointing campaign. On the other hand, they play Spal before this match, so they could well go into this game in 2nd. So there's still a lot of variation in how things end up for them. And part of that, I think, has got to come down to this discord behind the scenes, because we were hearing about it quite early. I remember in the autumn, there were rumours that Conte was having clashes with the board and clashes with the players.
Sure.
And now it's still going on. Like, potentially they might need to sell Milan Skriniar. Conte's apparently read Christian Eriksen, the Riot Act. He said expectations are high in Italy. It's like, Christian Eriksen is an international footballer who's played in the Premier League. Like, I'm pretty certain you don't need to tell him this. And also, Christian Eriksen's current numbers in Italy are ridiculous. They are ridiculous. Solid. He's got 3 goal involvements in 5 starts. He's got 0.9 expected goals and assists per 90. He's creating 3 chances a game and having 3 shots. Like, he's pretty obscene. And the only reason he's been dropped recently is because Alexis Sanchez has somehow found, I don't know, the fountain of youth, some of his Arsenal form back. Played really well against Torino. 2 tackles, 2 dribbles, 10 key passes, 2 shots and 2 assists.
What?
Against Brescia, when they won 6-0, he got 3 goal contributions. So he's now got 5 goals and assists in his last 4 games. Which is, you know, it would have been good if he could have come into this form where they were having a tough run, like in early spring. And I don't know, they kind of need these guys to be getting it together about now, because their running is not easy. They've got Fiorentina, they've got Napoli, they've got Atalanta after this game. And Lautaro Martinez has had a bit of a slump as well. He got his first goal in that victory over Torino in 7 matches, just his second after lockdown. Actually, Lautaro Martinez, I really do rate him. I think he's had a good season. I think he's going to be a star. But when you look at his numbers, they're not all that. He's got 13 goals and 3 assists in 29 appearances in Serie A this season. Like, that doesn't, like, blow my mind. I there are plenty of players in the Premier League who've done that, who I would definitely not sign. And I still kind of think that there's a ceiling on a side which is reliant on players like a 35-year-old Ashley Young. As much as I kind of rate Ashley Young and would defend him, I don't think that you're going to be competing at the top end of domestic and national and international competitions with a guy like him in your starting lineup. But I really don't know what to make of Inter. I'm sorry that's a bit muddled, but to be honest with you, are they good? Are they on the way down? Are they on the way up? Like, what is happening? Is Conte, you know, setting them on the path to a return to the big time? Or is Conte about to implode and send them back into mid-table? I have no idea. They could easily go out this summer and sell a bunch of their stars and they'd be exactly back where they started.
Yeah, no, it seems like absolute chaos. We covered it quite extensively on ERU, so if you want more of a detailed analysis on what's going on behind the scenes, head over to there from Monday. But Conte effectively apparently wants 9 to 10 players, according to Tuttosport, this summer. And the board want to give him 3 or 4, which
he's already signed about 8, isn't he? How many players has he bought in?
And 3 or 4 during coronavirus sounds pretty generous as it is, Conte. So maybe just deal with your current, you know, tools, as it were. And Skriniar is apparently being effectively chased out of the club. He doesn't really want to leave. He wants to sign a new deal. But Conte wants rid of him. Bastone's played very well in his minutes this year, but not a touch on Skriniar just yet. And lots of his signings from last summer haven't really worked out as expected. I don't think Diego Godin's covered himself in glory. So there's plenty of question marks for Conte. But in terms of this, it should be really even. Their last 4 meetings in all competitions have been draws. But Roma did have the better of it in the 17 meetings before that, winning 8 and Inter only 4. But despite that, it's a big game for Roma because this looks like the second consecutive season for the first time in 6 years that Inter will finish above Roma. And they are you know, long-established rivals. The Giallorossi won't like Inter Milan finishing above them. And they've got a fair few injuries to contend with as well, Roma. So they've got Juan Jesus, Smalling and David Santon are all out. Inter injuries, though, that's quite numerous. Sensi, Barella, Moses, Lukaku and Vecino are all either out or doubt. So it could be a massive, massive test. And Fonseca, as Joe says, will want to, you know, finish the season on a high after losing 10 games, which is, I think, their most since 2012-13. So question marks over both managers at this stage. But guys, we need a score prediction. What are you saying, Joe?
0-0.
No, come on.
Yeah, I think this will be 0-0. Absolute ball fest.
Joe, you're on Continental Club for the first time in a year and you come with a 0-0.
I'm coming with a 0-0.
Pat, what do you reckon? Can you bring some joy?
Yeah, why not? I'll say 2-2. Like, Inter have looked pretty beatable lately, so I think Roma will probably be right at it.
I like it. I'm going with 2-1 to Roma in a shock. But Inter, you know, they lost to Bologna the other day. Stranger things have happened. Get your score predictions in the comments down below, and let's move on to our quickfire question. Our quickfire question comes in from Campbell Carlisle, and it's with all the focus on the Champions League. Who do you see winning the Europa League? Pat, Arsenal sadly not in it, but who's your favourite?
Yeah, it's frustrating because there are some decent sides in it, but I think it looks pretty winnable. To me, the best team left in it are probably Man United, followed by Sevilla, Inter, and then Leverkusen. Like Leverkusen are interesting dark horses for this one because they've obviously finished their season, though everyone will have finished their season by this point. So technically, there's no need for teams to rotate. They can just play their first 11 and just see how they go. And Man United's first 11 is substantially better than anybody else's left in it, I think. I kind of think if Man United take it seriously, it should be theirs for the taking. But with teams like Leverkusen and Sevilla, they can beat anyone on their day. It's just if I had to put money, I'd say United.
Yeah, they do seemingly have the depth. I mean, Joe, would the Europa League win mean a lot to you at this stage, or are you just determined to get back into the Champions League?
I mean, if you win the Europa League, you get back in the Champions League, don't you?
Yeah, qualify automatically as well.
Obviously, top 4 is the priority for Manchester United, and the good thing about the Europa League being in August is we'll know whether or not we made it. If we don't make it, then there'll be extra pressure on us in the Europa League. I certainly agree with Pat. I think we're the best team in it. I think we are favourite. We should be favourites to win that competition. We should be rolling past a lot of these teams. I do think Wolves stand a really good opportunity here, just because it's one game shootout, it's not over 2 legs, and Wolves are so hard to beat in single games. So I think Wolves and Nuno Espirito Santo will be pretty confident, given that they won't have to, like Pat said as well, rotate players. It can be their full strong first 11. So Wolves and Man United, I think, are the teams that will go the furthest for me.
Interesting. Yeah, I'd probably put Inter Milan in there as well. I think they've got a lot of options, particularly in forward areas and midfield, particularly if they get Barella and Sensi back fit. But and they're playing Getafe, which they should beat quite easily, although I can't imagine it'll be the most entertaining game. Both two very attritional sides. But yeah, Wolves, Man United, both have good shouts, but I think it's difficult to look past Man United at the moment. So guys, that's our pick for who's going to win the Europa League. Make sure you let us know who you guys think is going to be triumphant come the end of August in the comments down below. And that's all we've got time for on Continental Club for this week. Joe, thank you very much for joining.
No
First
worries,
Continental
mate.
Club in a while.
Yeah.
What should the good people go and do now?
Go over and watch We Need to Talk. I put that on Tuesday actually this week, obviously reacting to the news about Manchester City and the shambles that is FFP.
Yeah, nice. Pat, anything from you?
Head over to Football Daily Podcast, subscribe to the new channel, check out the latest episodes, and obviously subscribe to the podcast through whichever app you use as well.
Perfect. Thanks very much, guys. We'll see you next week. Bye.